Hi there. Welcome to a new episode of Branding with Friends, the show where branding meets key business topics. Here you're going to learn tips straight from the experts on everything from content repurposing to marketing a book to inclusivity. We focus on what you can do right now to use these topics plus the power of branding to attract your ideal clients. I'm your host, branding expert Annie Franceschi of Greatest Story Creative. I help small business owners and service business owners tell their story and show their value through clear messaging and consistent branding. I'm also a former Disney storyteller, professional speaker, and the author of two best-selling books, Establish Yourself and Permission to Try. And today, I'm very excited to introduce you to one of my new friends in the business world. If you have been really wanting more referrals and better referrals, immediately, you're going to love today's guest. My guest today is the lovely Liz Best. Liz is an executive coach for women in impact, founder and facilitator of Girls Club Collective, and the host of Women Changing the World podcast. Since launching her coaching and consulting practice in 2020, she's helped hundreds of leaders navigate ESG careers, uplevel their thought leadership, and become more effective change agents. Liz, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Annie. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here because we are doing a unique topic today that I think not enough people talk about or really get into the big picture of it all on this topic, which is social proof. So I didn't even know what social proof was for the first couple of years of my business, even though it was influencing all the buying decisions I was making as a business owner and a person. So tell us a little bit about, what is social proof and what angle at which, when we were talking about all the topics you could come on and talk about, why this one? Why did we find this to be, the right thing to talk about for our coaches and consultants who are listening today?
Totally. Great questions. I'll take the first one first. So please keep me honest if I forget the second part. So I think, first of all, what is social proof? So if I had to summarize social proof in a sentence, I would say it's basically when you say don't just take it from me. Social proof is examples of other people who are backing up what you're saying, who are willing to kind of speak on behalf of you and your brand and your business and the services that you're providing. There's a number of different ways that you can capture social proof or share social proof. That could be kind of behind the scenes screenshots of things people have either said directly to you or written about you. It can be testimonials from past, current clients, people that you're working with. And it can also take the form of referrals when people are like, oh my gosh, you have to meet my friend Liz. She's amazing. So those are all examples of again, don't just take it from me, but someone that you already know, love, trust is telling you, or someone who you admire, or just a random stranger on the internet is saying no, she's for real.
Right. So it is that credibility that
Mhm.
when other people vouch for your service or your product and they vouch for working with you, it's some form of that. And I love that you just gave us some examples of that. So that is a written testimonial, that is a video, that is literally someone saying to their girlfriend, you've got to talk to Liz or you've got to talk to Annie. Like all of those things fall under this idea of social proof, something where we are showing that other people are showing what it's like to work with us. And I love the kind of reading rainbow of you say but don't just take my word for it. Like that's immediately where my head went. But maybe that's just because I just finished another Star Trek show, who's to say. But, on that note, you do a lot of incredible things. You work with a lot of women. Why come on Branding with Friends and talk about social proof? I thought that was really interesting. We were just talking about it before we hopped on about this idea of I know a lot of people a lot of my clients, and I think a lot of you listening struggle with the idea of self-promotion, right?
Mhm.
They struggle with being the face of their business. They don't want it to be all about them. They are not self-promotional. They don't like social media. Maybe social proof, just the word social being in there is kind of scary. So tell us a little bit about the angle on that, like how to think about this and why you wanted to come speak on it from your experience.
Totally. Oh my goodness, where to start? So I think there's so many different dimensions to how gathering this information can be helpful for you as an individual, whether or not you're an entrepreneur. And then also, if you are an entrepreneur, how this is extremely helpful for you and your business. So, from an individual perspective, again, even if you're not running your own business, I recommend to almost all of my clients, I say almost because I hate absolutes, but is to start taking screenshots of like nice emails that people send them, to have like what one of my former colleagues used to call like a sunshine yellow folder of just compliments that they'd received over the years, or like congratulations on a job well done. Like, I'm such a big believer in celebrating all the things. And I think that, as women, there's so many reasons that we've been often conditioned not to brag, not to take up space, not to celebrate. I'm actually currently reading Elise Lunen's new book, on our best behavior, Seven Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good. And it like goes really deep on some of this. So highly recommend that if that's an interesting topic to you. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many reasons that we have been conditioned not to celebrate ourselves, not to take up space. And I think building a practice of like actually recognizing and really receiving the positive feedback, the praise, the accolades that we are being given, can really help with confidence, and like really quieting that inner critic voice that might say that we can't do something. I have someone I'm thinking of who was in the girls club in our very first mastermind, who was like, yeah, it was really helpful to like actually start capturing this stuff because I'm a facts person. I needed to look at the facts, but when I looked at the facts, it was like, this is going really well. I'm doing a great job. And so I think it can offer like a really grounded lens, when we're
Yeah.
kind of pushing back against that inner critic voice. But then for
Yeah.
entrepreneur, oh, sorry,
Go
I'll
ahead.
I'll pause there and then I'll go into how it can be helpful for entrepreneurs in your business.
Well, let's save that for the tips because I think that we're about to hop into your 3 action tips and you've already kind of touched on it. But I think you're going to go deeper and we can use it through the lens of entrepreneurs. But I love that you use it through the lens of just women in general. And one of the things, my books aren't exclusively for women, but in both Permission to Try and Establish Yourself, I talk about this idea of it's so important to give yourself credit. And that we don't, in particular as women, or underrepresented people and things like that, we are sort of conditioned to not pat ourselves on the back, to not give ourselves credit, that feels really negative and wrong. But yet that's really where a lot of success in business comes from, is that if you don't put yourself out there as a confident person and let people get to know you, they don't know what it's like to work with you and they don't know, like, and trust you. And so it's sort of this catch 22. And what I love about this episode and these tips, you're going to share three tips with us today, are really going to be some things you can take away right now as you're listening to this to start changing that dynamic, to start actually documenting it, not just for other folks to come and work with you, but for yourself, and to be able to see that what the facts are, what the story really is, not the story that's all in our head. Because I am just as bad as anybody else. That the story in my head is it's never good enough. But being able to see it, and I think you're going to give us some really great tactical ways to do that. So, if you've never listened to Branding with Friends or it's your first time, we give 3 tips. Every expert comes on with 3 tips that you can actually put into practice right away. We're going to save that 3rd tip right for the end to make sure that you hear some other great resources that Liz has to share with us. So, without further ado, now that we know what social proof is, we want to have more of it in our business, even just for our own benefit, to get outside our own brain, give ourselves a little more credit. What is that first thing we should do?
Totally. So I previewed this a bit, but I think the first thing to do, and you don't even have to do anything with this yet, but the first thing to do is to make it a regular practice that when someone says something nice to you or something nice about your work, you take a screenshot and you save it on like your phone, your desktop. Again, you don't have to share it immediately, but just start gathering that data, ideally in like a screenshot format or like organized in one place. I'll confess, mine is not as organized as I would like it to be. But when I look at the screenshots, photos folder on my phone, it is often a lot of like a lot of these snippets. So just start capturing these things. You never know when they'll come in handy, but it's good to just get in the habit immediately. Like when you're feeling that feel and you're grinning ear to ear, take a screenshot.
I love that, and I wish someone had said it to me so much earlier on. And I just, this is going to sound really silly, but like just knowing the functionality of my phone. So for those of you that are Apple users, like what I do is I will screenshot. It could be an email, it could be a LinkedIn post or whatever. I'll screenshot it on my phone, and then I will add it to an album. So I have a couple albums on my phone. So I have one that's just about my work. I have one that's about me speaking. I have separate ones for each of my books. And that's really nice. So that when the time came, I did this for years. And then recently, about a couple months ago, I went to my virtual assistant and said, I need to use these. I'd like to create some social posts. Can you build me some templates? here's some Mad Libs copy. And we went through them like, and then plug these in. Like I basically just uploaded all the screenshots for her and it was done. And I never would be able to go back and find them all again. So doing it live in the moment is such an easy practice, especially when you kind of just immediately go, oh, this is a great comment about the book. You put it in your little book album on your phone, and then one day you can use it, right? Even if you're not ready just yet. I like that you were like, just start this as a practice.
Totally, totally. Well, and I think too, it's like, especially with the screenshots, and I would say like to the extent possible, like screenshot it's like so it can be anonymous unless you have permission to share. I feel like I hope that goes without saying, but also like don't put anyone on blast
Well,
who
on
doesn't.
so on Canva and other tools, like one other thing you can do is I just take them raw, and then my assistant will gray out those things, in certain cases, right? So just knowing that that's a step, but you don't also have to like. Sometimes it's kind of impossible to take some of that information out just when you're screenshotting it. So like you can just screenshot it and then edit it later if you need to.
Definitely, definitely. And what I was gonna add too is I do think the power of the screenshot in particular is like I think as humans we have like just an inner voyeur, so many of us, and I do think that there's something about like actually seeing the raw words in whatever format they came that can just really I think lend extra credibility, even if and when it's less polished, to the fact that like these are real things that are happening and like real conversations and real words from a real person.
Right, absolutely, like, that amazing credibility, and I think you also touched on this, and I would say the other thing you can do is when you get great emails, like, I have labels for those, and I do a similar kind of thing, like encouragement or, you know, something I didn't realize I should be doing was tracking my client wins, which is sort of not exactly what we're saying, like, some of that's just feedback about how great you're doing, but when your clients get great results, tagging that so that when you build your next sales page, you build your next website, you've got those gold nuggets. It's not uncommon for me to get something from a client and go, I'm going to put that in my encouragement folder. I'm going to put it in the wins folder. I'm going to put it in maybe three different places because it falls under three different things for me. And then I have this sort of library, as it were, to pull from.
Totally, totally. I feel like what you're describing is like we're currently working on like actually building out like a database of like all because right now it's living in so many different places. So I feel like especially if you're new to this practice and you're starting fresh, like organize it now so that you don't have to go back and like clean up and pull it all in later because it is like truly a treasure trove, both for you and for your business.
And it'll make your life, so, from coming from the branding perspective is, I build websites for people, right? Or I'm writing their brand messages. And one of the biggest things I like to ask is like, what do your clients say about you? And you don't want to be empty handed there. And you want to have some material that is going to look great on the front page of your website. So you never know what's going to be relevant or how you're going to grow. Just save that stuff because people like me as brand strategists are going to ask you, what are your clients saying? And that's not even just useful for getting more clients. It's useful for making your business better, finding the messaging and how do they talk about what you do. That should probably be the words you were using, less any creative words you or I could come up with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you ideally want people to like read your website, read your emails, read your whatever, and be like, how did you get in my head? How did you know
Exactly. And
what I
it's
was
not as hard as
thinking?
we all make it out to be. It's really about listening. And you can't do that. So if you're not on board yet, this is another good reason to get on board with social proof because you will start to learn more of like what that client experience really is because you're start listening better to their language and how they phrase things, how they describe the wins, all of that good stuff.
Totally.
So that was our first tip is screenshot your wins. What is the second thing we should do if we want to better leverage social proof?
Yeah, so the next one is one that you may have heard about in the past, but it is to make sure that you ask for testimonials from your clients. And I'm happy to share, I'll come back to some questions that I ask. But asking your clients, ideally, like right before the end of a container, while you're still in the container, this is something that like always working on and improving on myself. But ideally, while people are still in your space, asking for a testimonial that you can use anonymously or attribute it. There's different levels, obviously, of like how much people may want to like put their face to their words, depending on the nature of the work that you're doing. But asking people to share, like, I often will ask for like 1 to 3 sentences. I'll give a few different questions so people can choose from different prompts to really describe in their own words what the experience was like working with you. And some of the questions I love to ask are like, what would you tell one of your best friends? about working with me? Um, what made you decide to work with me in the first place? It's a great way to find out like what sets you apart compared to other people. And then what were the results? This one is like so important. What were the results, like tangible, spiritual, emotional, energetic, financial? Like, what have been some of the results for you of our work together, and be as specific as possible? And then this is actually one from Tonic Site Shop. I love their content, and they had a post not too long ago about like how to get great reviews. And that's at the end of asking however many questions, like don't overwhelm people ideally, but ask a few questions to get the juices flowing, maybe give them some examples as well to like help them visualize what this is eventually going to look like. The last question should be, is there anything else you'd like to add? Because that's often where you will get the very best stuff.
I completely agree. And I think that's spot on. And I definitely asked many of those questions, in particular, the one at the end, like, I phrase it as like, is there anything else that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to share with me? Which I think is really important to have these dialogues where there is space to share what's good, what's bad, what, because I don't know, I'm sure you've seen the statistics that like an unhappy client is unhappy whether or not you talk to them. And they're going to share more about a negative experience than they are about a positive one. So you really want to make sure that like you're providing that dialogue moment. One misstep that I have been on the receiving end on that I always try to coach people through with sort of my brand strategy coaching hat is to not just assume that people are good with like a testimonial, like to just email them and say, hey, will you give me a few words about how great this was? Because that sort of skips the point of asking them for their whole experience, because maybe there was something you did that wasn't great or something you could improve on. I know that I had a very mixed client experience with somebody I worked with, and I was very taken aback when I just kind of got the email that was like, great, so if you just want to share how great your experience was with so and so, it wasn't even like sent from them. And I was like, this is very assumptive, and I actually am not happy and would like to have a conversation. And so all that to say, like, I mean, you can do it in your style, whatever's working for you. But one thing that I have done also for efficiency's sake, because a lot of my clients hire me to write. So when I'd ask them to answer questions, they'd be like, well, I'm not the writer, you are. Like, I don't know. I actually have built this into my process. So at the end of my container, whether that's coaching or done for you branding, we have an end of project call or meeting where part of that time is specifically to interview them live about their client experience. And I transcribe it, I send it back to them. So the effect is they still have their words summarized. It's just a different flavor of doing it, right? But it does invite an opportunity for dialogue, because I also ask, like, is there anything that you think I or Greatest Story could do better from your experience? Any ideas? Anything you want to discuss? Because sometimes little things could become big things if you don't talk about them, right? Or people have great ideas for stuff. But I call this my fans and feedback process. But it's spot on to like ask and have the dialogue, because you're going to learn more about your business and you're going to get great reviews and referrals out of it. And you're going to like, I think the big thing that people overlook with this is don't just get the quote, get the relationship, solidify the relationship before you move on.
Totally. I love that approach so much. And I also just would 100% underline, like, make sure you get like their overall feedback on the experience first. And then like, I mean, I have it as part of my like exit questionnaire with coaching as an example, is like, give me all your feedback. And then if you want to give a testimonial, like, would you be willing to give a testimonial? But I think making sure that there's a place for people, and I love the idea of doing this live. I'm gonna have to think about how I can incorporate that, because I think giving people space to share like what went well and what could go better in the future, and then also I think have a chance to gush if and when and as appropriate live, I think can even like feel better too for the person like offering that, right, to get to experience you receiving it.
It makes it easier for them because they can get it done in like 10 minutes. Often a lot of clients want to copy this process. It's also nice because I send it to them and it makes it like it takes 30 seconds for them to post a review, to Google or to LinkedIn, which is why I have such great high quality reviews. They're still their comments. I haven't edited them. I'm literally just like putting, here's what you said, here's the top 3 or 4 sentences kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it. Not every client is going to be a fit for that. Maybe they don't want to be put on the spot. That there's lots of ways to kind of fine tune a process, but I share in my book a lot about this. And I think my big fear about doing it at all was, well, what if somebody is like not happy? Right. And I share a story, and the short version of it is I did one of these and it did not go well. But what happened was like I kind of almost immediately was like, oh, they're not happy. But it provided me, and I was surprised, but it gave me an opportunity to have a dialogue with them, to have them feel listened to. And the long and short of it was, because we had that moment, we kind of all agreed, me and the clients, that maybe if we'd known what we knew at the, later, that we wouldn't have necessarily worked on this project together. But they realized that, hey, I'm a great fit for solopreneur and independent businesses. And then they started sending me referrals for them. So a possible very negative, end the relationship and, hurt my brand and reputation, turned into, hey, we acknowledge we all like could have done better in communication, we're happy with what we got, and we're going to send you referrals. Like, that's what you want. And that's what I mean about, like, build the relationship, don't just get the review piece of this.
Totally. Totally. Well, and I think one other thing I would just note there, on the topic of feedback. I mean, I genuinely feel like feedback is a gift, but something, a huge reframe, that I was recently gifted by Tara Moore, who wrote Playing Big, is, feedback is not information about you, it's information about the other person. And so if you are working with people who you like want to continue working with, any feedback, positive or negative, is like really helpful information for you to have, that's going to like help you run the best business that you can possibly run and provide the best service you can possibly provide. And so, opening up that feedback channel, and keeping that in mind, I think, can be a really great way to like get really useful information. And like, it's totally a work in progress for me, as I know it is for many women in my world, but to like depersonalize it a little bit as like information about other people that you might not have been able to get any other way.
Right. It's so valuable. And I am that recovering perfectionist and people pleaser that like doesn't want to hear it, but what needs no, I've learned that it's so valuable to hear it. Because sometimes you ask that question of what could I do better, and you hear an amazing idea you never would have thought of, or a blind spot in your process you didn't even know what was going on. Like, both those things have happened to me. And also sometimes you get people who are like, no, it was amazing. Like, and they give you kind of the inverse answer, and that makes you feel like you're on the right track and helps you have a seamless client experience. But you don't get there without asking the question and kind of volunteering the opportunity. That said, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's an amazing meme going around that's like, when I said I wanted feedback, what I meant was I'd like a compliment. I'm like, yes, that is my personality at a core. But I will take the feedback, and I think your point is well taken, which is feedback is not really about you; it's about how the other person feels. And if you want to get to know people and really serve them better, you have to better understand that. And so, taking some of the ego out of it can be really useful. I know you've been sharing some great tips with us. You've got a third tip to bring it all together. But before we do that, I know you wanted to mention something that would be a great resource for folks who are listening today. So, what is that way that people can connect with you, hear more about what you have to say about empowerment around women and helping them feel more confident in the roles they play?
Great question, which I so appreciate. I would say for anyone who's listening who wants like, inspiration, who wants, like tips, tricks, younger self advice, like all kinds of like insider insights from the real life humans who are birthing the new. I'm the host of the Women Changing the World podcast, which is a podcast on a mission to shine a spotlight on those people. So you can find us on iTunes, on Spotify, basically wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. So please, give a quick search for the Women Changing the World podcast by Liz Best. And you can get to meet some of the like totally incredible, amazing humans in my world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing about that. And if this episode got you thinking, well, I don't know how to tell my story, I don't feel confident about that, I don't even really know what my clients think about me, and you want to talk about branding, you can always hop on my calendar for a free consult at greateststorycreative.com. Liz, I'm so glad you're here. You've told us to screenshot our wins, ask for those testimonials and feedback. What is that third thing we should keep in mind?
So the third thing to keep in mind is, remember that you can both request and incentivize referrals for your business. I'm a big believer that when we discover something or someone awesome, we can't help but want to tell our friends about it. And like it's likely that the people who are currently your dream clients also are friends with other people who would also be your dream clients. And so, something that I found really helpful in building out my business overall, launching the Girls Club Collective earlier this year, is not only thinking about how to ask for referrals and make it really easy for people to refer their friends. But also thinking about how to incentivize referrals. And there's a lot of ways to do this that are not necessarily like just cash. I actually asked within my community, and not that there's anything wrong with cash for referrals, but I think you want to know like what's the incentive that your people actually want. And so I asked within our community, like, what would you like in exchange for like referring the awesome people that you know to join us? I gave them a few options and the something else option, and it was like cash, champagne, or one-on-one coaching time. And it was like, I'm so glad I asked because far and away the answer was one-on-one coaching time with me, which I would not have known if I had just guessed and picked something. And so that really helped us design a referral process within the Girls Club Collective that I hope and believe like it makes it really easy for our awesome members to tell other awesome people about what we're up to and invite them to join.
I think that's so wonderful to be thinking that way and not assuming that it's just cash or whatever, the case may be, but going is another reason to have that direct line to the clients you're working with and asking them what they think. So I think that's a really good takeaway. Tell me a little bit more about how you go about when you say requesting a referral. How do you, is that an email? How do you reach out? Like, what do you think is sort of, because I know people are gonna go, I could never do that. So talk to us a little bit about like what is the authentic approach to doing that that's not the sleazy sales approach?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And honestly, it's something that I feel like I'm still definitely learning and experimenting with as I go. I think a couple things are helpful. I mean, we do like within the community, like send an email of like, okay, applications are open. Like we want our members to know like what's going on with the business and what's going on with the community and like when the right time is, if they've been thinking about making referrals. Um, so we make it like again as easy as possible for people to fill out a
Yep.
form. We also give them like all the assets and collateral if they'd rather like post about it themselves or in their own words. We make that as easy as possible. But outside of like written communication, I've also just found it really helpful to like have a conversation with either people who are in the community or clients and say like, hey, I'm thinking about how to attract more clients like you or more community members like you. Like, what do you think I should do? Something brilliant that I heard or read at some point in the past couple years is like that people don't love giving feedback, which I know goes contrary to what we were just talking about, but they love giving advice. And so asking for advice on like how we can like make a better referrals process or make it easy for our members to like share about what we're up to has really helped me. I think kind of refine that ask over time, which again is an ongoing process. And also like I think people want to help, but often takes like going first and being vulnerable and admitting that like you need help and want help
Yeah. Yeah,
to then
it's
give
really
them the
tricky. Yeah.
invitation.
Yeah, I think that that's a lot of it, and that's what I consistently learn because I'm always this kind of person that thinks like I have to do it all myself, and I'm consistently trying to learn or unlearn that and ask for help when I need it because people are really willing to help. And I think as long as you're authentic and respectful of time, another tool that I love for this, that's actually a free tool on my website. It's called Your Best Referral Bio. So if you don't already have this, go grab it. It's at greateststorycreative.com/referral bio. And I wrote it to literally make making referrals easier because I noticed that when I network with people, they almost never would send me an email that was like, hey, here's what I do, and here's some intro language. If you happen to run into the right person, like here's who the right person is. So I could bookmark and save it. I have my own version of this that I can literally type in 30 seconds. Like anytime, like I'll send it to you, Liz, like right after we hop off of this. I do it with every Branding with Friends guest. And then that encourages them to send me something back too. And so it's a great way to not lose the thread and to make, I think the name of the game with referrals and getting people to connect you and be motivated by social proof is just make it easy. Like that's such a great business maxim across the board. Is it easy to work with you? Is it easy to get on a sales call with you? Is it easy to refer you to somebody else? Like anything you can do, whether that's like intro language, asking them what they want, screenshotting a win, like all these things are about making that path of I'm curious about who you are to working with you a seamless and powerful one.
Totally. And I think even just to go a step further, it's like also making it easy for people to help you
Yes.
spread the word about who you are and what you do. Like make it as easy as possible because people want to help, but they often just don't know how. And so how do you make
And
it
they don't
super
want work.
easy?
They
Yeah.
don't make it their job to like describe what you do, or like I literally just I would like some more speaking gigs this year, and I thought to myself today, I emailed two of my really close client friends and I was just like, my instinct was to send them, here's my blurb, here's all this stuff. And I was like, I'm going to take a step back and just say, like, how are you doing? And here's what I'm thinking about. I know you're connected to all these people. Would you be interested or be available to send out an email to a couple of people if I send you some copy to make it easy? So, like, asking permission first, like slowing down the train, making that like, hey, if you do this favor for me, I'm going to make that super seamless for you. But is that even an appropriate thing to ask? Or should I be thinking about this differently? Not just assuming that there's buy-in. So there's a way to kind of do this in your own way that's authentic, and still ask for help and get it when you need it. But I think it's always about just kind of respect. Yeah, I think it all comes down to respecting the relationship. And that's the more you do with that and the better you treat your clients, the more social proof you can have and leverage. So with that said, we said you told us to screenshot your wins, ask for testimonials, request and incentivize referrals. Liz, is there anything else or anything, last parting shot, anything you want to say about the world of social proof?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess the last thing I'll offer is an invitation that if you know someone who is doing something amazing and you're listening to or watching this and you're feeling inspired, go shout out your business friend or your coach or your client or whoever it is. Um, I think that like often we we know so much in our society about how to celebrate certain like life milestones, and I don't think we talk enough about how to celebrate like business and work milestones. And I guarantee that like whoever is like coming up as I'm saying this, like, will very much appreciate if you want to just post or send a love note. That would be my invitation to you.
I love that. It kind of makes me wish we were doing that on every episode, but I think that's a really great challenge, to take people up on. I know I just got a video out of the blue from one of my clients, and it like literally like almost made me cry the other day. And she was just like so thankful, and I just didn't know where it came from. So send that good juju into the world. I'm gonna do it on this challenge. So thank you, Liz, for that. We all hope that you enjoyed another episode of Branding with Friends. Many thanks to my special guest, Liz Best. Tune in next time when we're going to tackle yet another topic where branding and business meet. Until then, I'm Annie Franceschi with Greatest Story Creative. You can find all our episodes, branding resources, the free Your Best Referral bio, and more on our website at greateststorycreative.com. Stay awesome.